example where the people you elect matter and the policies that they enact or that don't act upon matter. And for a few years now, we've made a lot of sound bites about how much we don't think No Child Left Behind properly measures schools, properly gives the credit to teachers that we need. And it was about 19 months ago that Obama asked Congress to take action to reform NCLB, because the consensus is that it needs to be retooled or scrapped, and that it doesn't measure student achievement accurately. I've been hearing this from my wife for a while now. What frustrates me is that it's easy to get an applause line when you're pointing that out, that it needs to be reformed. But when the president calls for reforms and nothing comes out of the Congress for 19 months, here's the real letdown. It's not just because it's a bad tool and it's taken years to reform. And this is why electing somebody with a different kind of voice to the U.S. Senate, a different kind of approach, really matters. You should be frustrated like me that the reason they're starting to opt states out is because there's actually going to be a fiscal impact that hurts kids in a couple of years. It's not just philosophically bad. It's not just about the self-esteem of the teachers or mismeasuring schools. But now the actual federal government might be in a position that they're going to cut federal funding to nearly 82% of schools throughout the country. In a recession. Now, why aren't elected officials talking about the fiscal accountability of that issue? Why is it that we're talking about, yes, we're against it, yes, let's go out and take an elected official out, the Republicans are bad? When you enact bad policy, and you don't have sound financial principles, and you don't have a sustainable long-term plan for the American dream in education, and really respect the outcomes of students and teachers, and really get into the on-the-ground effect, what ends up happening is when everybody gets political and both sides get really ugly with each other, the president's doing what he has to do. I'm going to let states opt out because I don't want to cut funding to school kids. Now, let me remind you who you select to win elections matters as well. Who's in charge of education right now in New Mexico? Susana Martinez. So on one hand, Obama's forced to let people out of NCLB. And if you got a good Democrat who loves education and public resources and understands kids and teaching and is about teacher achievement, you're okay. If you're New Mexico with a Republican governor who wants to gut public education, there is a disaster potentially waiting to happen. Now, who you're going to hold accountable for that situation shouldn't be the voters that didn't turn out for those elections. There should be elected officials that are really accountable to the quagmire that we really have. And that's why it matters to elect a leader that understands federal government, state government, and local government. That's why it matters when funding trickles down from the federal level to the state level to the local level. We need someone like me who's looked under the hood of government, who's tracked federal funds, who understands how operational governments work, and most importantly, I have to give an opinion on whether the taxpayer, like a student or a teacher, is really being served. So that's the real challenge that you brought up, is that it's not just bad policy, but we're in a situation right now where we actually will be hurting kids by denying them funding. And the bigger problem for New Mexico is that if you're advocating against Susana Martinez, trying to fight the good fight, it's about to get a lot worse, because the federal government and the state government didn't get their act together. And that, to me, is enough to run for the United States Senate. So thank you very much.